Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. While growing older is inevitable, many of the troubles we associate with aging, including dementia, disability, and an increased dependence on others, are not. The choices we make now can help us maintain our vitality, a sharp mind, and our independence as we age. For anyone hoping to slow the aging process, as well as anyone who acts as a caregiver, this new book that we're going to cover today offers a hopeful, healthy way forward. Timothy Jennings is a medical doctor. He's been in private practice as a Christian psychiatrist and certified master psychopharmacologist since 1997. He spent more than 2 decades researching the interface between biblical principles and modern brain science. Is a highly sought-after lecturer, an international speaker, and the author of The God-Shaped Brain and The God-Shaped Heart. He's in private practice in Chattanooga, Tennessee. You can find out more at the www.agingbrainbook.com and his ministry website, comeandreason.com. Joining us now to continue in our ongoing discussion about the aging brain, proven steps to prevent dementia and sharpen your mind, is our good friend, Dr. Timothy Jennings. Tim, good to see you again, my friend.
Yes, Eric, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, it's a delight. You know, in between our sessions together, which are, lately they've been almost every month, we've increased the frequency over the course of the covering of the God-Shaped Heart, which I think was where we started together. Then we went to the God-Shaped Brain, and then into the aging brain. And we've been spending a good amount of time talking about the aging brain because there are so many people who are being impacted in this area, and there's so much that can be done that this is not being presented in the pulpits. This isn't a part of the gospel message, but this is a part of the blessings of God that have given us the ability to be, he says, I've not given you a spirit of timidity, but I've given you a sound mind. And so how do we maintain that sound mind is really what the aging brain is about. How do we take care of ourselves, the decisions we make, the lifestyle we live, and practical applications of some foundational truths that you present that say, look, you can reverse early stages. You can actually put the brakes to this aging process if you'll do certain things. And it's been a fascinating subject, and we're getting a lot of response to it because there are a lot of caregivers out there, family members, and a lot of people who are concerned that genetically that it is inevitable that this is going to happen to them. And that's really not the case, is it?
Well, you've raised so many good points here. And I think the mindset that people have makes a difference. And what I mean by that is, if you don't believe there's anything you can do to make a difference, then you actually don't typically try or take actions to make a difference. So the first thing is to realize our lifestyle choices and the choices we're making through life do matter. It really does matter, the food choices that we make, not in every specific morsel that we've ever put in our body, but the general trends of our dietary patterns through life absolutely make a difference in how we age. Do we age more rapidly, or do we slow that decline? Do we provide the body the resources it needs to maintain its wellness and health? Do we have lifestyles where we, again, over the course of life, get adequate sleep each night? Because we all know there are crises that come along, or we travel to other parts of the world. We'll have a night or two where we don't get a good night's sleep. But the general trend, are we getting 7 to 8 hours of sound sleep each night? Or do we push ourselves to 5 and 6 hours of sleep chronically, or chronic third shift working or flipping of the shifts chronically? This is out of harmony with health. So first, just recognizing, hey, choices actually make a difference. They really do. And we have an option to make choices that are intelligent, reasonable, and I will tell you, that are in harmony with God's design for life. And as we move that direction, we get healthier.
You know, I have to laugh because each night before you and I go on, I jump up to agingbrain.com to take a look at the various memes and various postings you have. And there's some that I've seen, just like words in the Bible, that, you know, I've seen them there, but I never really paid a lot of attention to them. They didn't jump out at me. But one of them just caught me last night, and it says the simple action to reduce dementia risk is to practice good oral hygiene. Daily brushing, flossing, and regular dental checkups will reduce your risk of dementia. Now, I remember having a conversation with someone who had a heart condition that was caused because of a bacteria infection that moved from the mouth to the heart, and then began to kind of question my doctor and dentist and say, is that kind of common? And they said there's a direct correlation between dental health and heart health. And,
that's right.
And that's the travel of infection. If you don't treat it, it's going to go to the heart. That's the path of travel. And we really don't make that connection at all. And you've connected this to good oral hygiene is a dementia risk preventative measure. How does that work?
So there's two pathways. You've identified the starting point, which is bad oral hygiene leads to mouth infections, infections of the gum, infections of the roots of the teeth. And so those infections introduce bacteria into the bloodstream. That bacteria in the bloodstream now has two diverging pathways. One, it can set up distant or remote infection sites. That's the problem what your friend had in his heart. The bacteria got onto the valves of the heart and had endocarditis. Inside the heart, inflammation and infection. And then that infection inside the heart can cause problems by little pieces of the bacteria that are building up there can flip off now and go circulating through the bloodstream into the brain, causing little tiny strokes in the brain, contributing to vascular dementia. That's one way. The other pathway is all infections, when we have them, the body responds with inflammation to attack the infection. That's why when you get a cold or you get some flu or something, you'll get a fever and you'll get aches and pains, and that's your body's response fighting the infection, and that's what's causing your body temperature and so forth to go up. So if you have chronic dental problems, or you're chronically introducing this bacteria in your bloodstream, you're creating a state of chronic inflammation. And those inflammatory factors staying up chronically then put you at risk for Alzheimer's dementia. So the tooth decay can increase risk of both vascular and Alzheimer's dementia through two different pathways.
In my note to you about today's discussion, I brought up a couple of points that I thought would be of interest to the audience and are of particular interest to me as I interact with so many different people, as I go through my own. You know, it's interesting that there actually happens to be a guy named Tim Jennings, not a doctor, not a psychiatrist, not a psychopharmacologist. Happens to be a guy, a man named Tim Jennings. He's somebody's son, he's somebody's husband, he's somebody's father. There's a man behind the doctor. Well, there's a man behind the rabbi. And unfortunately in ministry, we kind of make this the impenetrable veil. This is kind of we claim pastoral privilege over ourselves, where we don't allow people to pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. And it winds up putting you in a position where you become somewhat disconnected. I think that I did a survey a small survey of about 25 professional licensed counselors that work with pastors, and say that 90% of them suffer from loneliness. They suffer from a feeling of being disconnected because they can't really connect. They can serve, but there has to be almost this arm's length, because then you start crossing boundaries into that privileged personal area, which makes it difficult to correct, difficult to admonish, difficult to have that straight talk that you sometimes need to have. So we wind up being almost trained to separate, and then we find ourselves in a place of either isolation or bouts of recognizing we're not as connected as we want to be as far as community, or we go back to Scripture where it says it's not good for the man to be alone. uh, does this contribute to the depressions and anxieties and panic disorders and things of the like that you are dealing with, and you have some alternative therapies, but you also have traditional therapies using medications to help people with these particular conditions, added to biblical counsel and added to traditional counseling. But do these have an impact on long-term brain health?
Yeah. So you're really describing two things: one, stress, and the other, social isolation or loneliness. And the social isolation has been studied, and in fact, people who are socially isolated do have higher stress, and they have alterations in how their genes are expressed compared to people who are socially connected. And those gene expression changes for the socially isolated folks go down the pathway of increasing inflammation and decreasing the body's ability to fight infections. Whereas the socially connected people, gene expression goes the other way. They have reduced inflammation and they're more effective at fighting infections. And so there is a real physiological consequence to isolating oneself. Now, people in service, like pastors, rabbis, doctors, that do need to have a certain professional distance from, say, their parishioners or their patients, they can still have social connection with other individuals in their life, but perhaps leave a professional boundary with the people they serve. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and I encourage people to build, and the social connection doesn't have to be with 1,000 people. You could have the social benefits from just a small group of people. One to five people can make a difference in your life.
Stress plays such a big part. We live in a stressful or stress-inducing. You don't have to choose to be stressed. I'm not a very stressed person. I tend not to be stressed about situations. We run a live television network, and we have, 5 minutes before a show is about to go live, we have somebody call and cancel. When we first started out, that was frantic. We had no shows in the can, and so what are we going to do? So I would do a live 1 hour impromptu teaching, something that I'm trained to do, to be instant in, season, and out. It wasn't stressful. It was just, what am I going to preach about? And I would do a live show. But as you age, you begin to look at stress, and I almost have this continuum, this checklist, and I ask myself the question: is this going to matter in a week? Is this going to matter in a month? Is this going to matter in 6 months? Is this going to matter in a year? Am I actually going to even remember this situation next week?
And what you're doing there is you're doing a cognitive intervention to evaluate what you're feeling stressed about and prioritize it or put it in perspective. You're actually saying, you know what, I'm being tempted to react to this as if it's a really, really life-threatening, all-emergent circumstance. But how big a deal is this in the reality and the grand scheme of life? What's the proper level of reaction here? And when you do that, you're able to go, this isn't really that big a deal. It's not life or death. It's not like I'm going to lose a limb. It's not my eternal salvation. And so you're able to put it in perspective and realize that, you know what, it's a minor stressor in life.
When we are stressed and we have stresses in our life, there's a change in our brain chemistry. We put out different chemical responders and dispatch a whole different arsenal of response mechanisms, which are chemical in format, produced by various glands, adrenal, brain chemistry changes.
In our body, there's two general types of stress. When we talk about stress, we're really talking about distress. but there's something known as eustress, and eustress is the positive types of changes, like mirthful laughter and loving relationships that do take energy, but they are reinforcing in healthy ways to us. So when we talk about when we just use the word stress, though, we're not talking about the eustress, the laughter, the healthy relationship. We're talking about the distress, and distress is when we are actually in that kind of fight or flight mode, that urgency sense, that emergency, take care of, and we're feeling that fear, and it's activating our amygdala, our brain's fear circuitry, which, as you said, is kicking up our adrenal glands, and we get all those negative hormones raging through our system, which is very unhealthy for us in the long term. And so when we talk about stress management, we're talking about how do we bring interventions into our life that reduce the firing of this fight or flight urgency sense, where we can have a greater sense of peace within.
So how does that affect those chemicals which are being released? And let's say it is rather frequent. There are people who have panic attacks, they have night terrors, they have suffer with anxiety. How does that impact the aging brain? Is that an accelerator, a decelerator? Is that something that, if managed, recognized and cognitively managed, whether it's through a combination of therapies, medications, whatever the available resources are to you, will that be one of the greater areas of impact in preventing the aging brain?
Yes, these are great questions. So let's make the distinction between an acute stress. Your loved one has just been in an accident, you've been called to the emergency room, and that is dealt with and eventually resolved in days or weeks, versus the chronic daily stressor that goes on, and you never seem to be able to unwind. You're always on edge, okay? It's the chronic, repetitive, even if the circumstances change, you're just from one crisis to another crisis to another crisis, and it seems like you're always in crisis management, even though the specific focus seems to change. If you're that kind of stressful, anxious, worried person, then that absolutely accelerates aging and increases your risk of dementia. And the reason it elevates these very negative corticosteroids and inflammatory factors in our body that affect immune system and alter our gene expression, causing the consequences that can lead, like insulin resistance, inflammation, insulin resistance can lead to increased obesity, heart attacks, strokes, as well as increased risk for dementia.
As you know, I have a regular segment with Dr. Mark Baker, who is really an expert on shame. It's really where his practice has moved into, and he really focuses on shame and looking at the cause and then the effects and working on removing that shame and setting the person free through his practice. We work with Dr. Ramona Pravasco, who deals with abuse survivors, she being one of them, and her practice is in the abuse area. And then with Dr. Larry Crabb, of course, his core principles are about our sin response to circumstances and to life. And then we talk with you, kind of rounding out this peer group we've been able to form for our audience, of looking at the larger, the bigger blocks that impact the life of believers, and things that you can do something about, warning signs, things that you need to respond to, because you also must understand that you're not going to find the joy, you're not going to find the peace, you're not going to find the life, the blessings that God has for you, not in material ways, but in the supernatural ways of that's peaceful, healthy, happy relationships and times of enjoyment and recreation and family connection, that these various response mechanisms are depriving you of. Well, then you reach an age where you have all these things compounded. The chronic complainer, the chronic critic, who, the narcissist, the person who's been so wounded that out of all of their responses are out of their wounds. And it seems like that's the perfect storm. The unforgiveness, the self-loathing, the constant focus on self as opposed to where our focus is supposed to be, which is on others.
No, you're exactly right. And what drives that focus on self is that fear response. The more fearful we get, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of financial ruin, fear of eternal salvation lost, fear of not being loved, the more fearful we get, the more self-focused we get, and the more self-critical we can become, and it becomes a really negative reinforcing cycle. And that only makes our stress worse, and we tend to then interact in relationships either from hyper insecurity and fear of rejection, and we're hypersensitive, and we take slights and injuries when none were intended, or we become a false bravado where we become completely unresponsive to criticism. We could care less what people think. But either way, when we have this fear-centered, self-centered approach to life, we end up then contaminating our relationships and actually contributing to relationship problems that further reinforce all the fears and insecurities. And it's a terrible spiral downward. And so, the biblical principles of love and truth, an outward altruistic, starting with a foundational love-trust relationship with a trustworthy Creator God. That's a foundation. Unfortunately, as you know, there are many versions of God out there that are taught in many circles that are really not trustworthy, and not loving. They're actually cruel and unkind and inflame fears. And so starting with that healthy spirituality, then that gives you a foundation to minister the love you receive to other people, which changes the dynamic of relationships.
So when we look at this set of factors, contributors, response mechanisms, how does that directly impact our increase our probabilities, increase our likelihood of suffering from early onset of dementia, or finding ourselves in an aging brain moving towards the decay of our processing abilities, our memory centers, our reasoning, and find that we actually have a hammer and a chisel in our own hands, and we're the ones who are actually responsible for chipping away at the very solid brain that God has given us, and by our emotional responses or our soulish responses, we're actually contributing to our own aging brain scenario.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so when you understand God as creator and he is the builder of reality, that he builds the laws upon which reality operates, that includes the laws of health, laws of physics, law of gravity, the laws upon which healthy relationships work. There are all these protocols upon which reality work. We as free beings can choose to operate in harmony with the laws of health, etc., like smoking or not smoking, breaking those laws, but we can't avoid consequences either way. If you, for instance, are a person who has chosen a sedentary lifestyle where you sit and eat potato chips and watch TV every day, you're free to make that choice, but you can't avoid the health-damaging consequences. Conversely, if you're a person who eats a healthy diet with fruits, grains, nuts, vegetables, you exercise regularly, you stay engaged with your mind, learning new things, you can't avoid the health benefits of doing that. It's just the way reality works. Many people don't understand that. They've gotten into what's called a reductionistic mindset, and they say, well, I've got really good genes or I've got really bad genes, and the genes I got from my family or my parents or my grandparents, they're what's going to determine it, so I can do whatever I want. It really won't matter. That is absolutely false. Absolutely false. Yes, the genes are interacting with environment, and some people may have more resilience than other people, but you still will be damaging your resilience or eating away at it if you're making unhealthy choices.
Well, I'm the absolute living embodiment of that. My father had a heart attack on the day he retired, and that led to his loss of identity It was so traumatic to him that he would not be working the next day, that it literally, of course, you don't have four arteries shutting down because of an emotional episode. But he was a red meat eater and a martini drinker and a smoker, and at 64 had a massive heart attack, and then spent the next 20 years of his life dealing with cancer and heart disease, and finally at 84 passed away, living a fairly infirmed life for 20 years, never enjoying the retirement that he so desperately worked so hard for. Now I have a 93-year-old mother who embraces the joys of life and laughs, and we carry on, and we send jokes to each other. We've been sending jokes. She used to send clippings from the paper long before there was email or text messaging. When I was away, and I'd been away for so long, that we had this, we would get articles, and we would find these comical, really absurd articles. And so she would stand in the grocery store line, and she would buy the Globe and the Enquirer and all these things, looking for the most absurd stories to send to me where I was away, where she knew I would get a chuckle out of it, and I would do the same with her. Well, we've been doing this. I've called her at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning for 53 years. Every Sunday for 53, doesn't matter where I am in the world, 11 o'clock Eastern time Sunday morning, I have a conversation with my mother. Sometimes it's a minute long, sometimes it's 10 minutes long, but this has been a tradition of us staying connected. And so here I'm from this two-parent, one killed himself by his lifestyle, by his mindset, and drove himself to the grave, and she is this vibrant, alive, throwing parties for the cast of every theater group that comes to Pittsburgh. She's the head of the community theater. And so at 93, she organizes a dinner for the cast. After the show closes, there's always the celebratory party in her home, and she caters it, and she's flamboyant, and she's exciting, and she's filled with laughter, and she's just a little, you can see it.
And you see her set, how not only did she make some healthy choices in how she lived, but she has a mindset that's alive. She has a heart that loves to live and loves people, stays engaged, stays active. She didn't have a mindset at age 65 that said, oh, I'm 65 now, it's time to wrap it in, roll it up, and quit. You see, and a lot of people in America with Social Security 65 have this mindset, well, I've worked, now I'm retired, now it's time to disengage from living. And that's just a death sentence.
You know, I want to talk about that because this mindset of age being a factor, you know, I'm classified as a geriatric, and it's hilarious to me that I go to a geriatric doctor that handles Medicare patients, and I'm 3 years into the program, and you know, I don't avail myself of it because I'm not sick. I don't have aches and pains and problems with heart disease and anything that I'm aware of. I have no ailments. I sleep fine. I eat fine. I get up every day, and I have a full 7-day week, and I engage with people. I don't have need for it, but I'm glad that it's available there if I should need it. But this mindset that we take on, this framework that we have, sets the tone for what the future will hold, and we become arbiters. We become purveyors of what our future is going to look like. And in the Bible, there's no such thing as retirement. And
Right.
so there was a period of my life when I looked forward to retirement. Now, I can't even imagine that there would be such a thing as retirement. That to me would be a death sentence if I couldn't do what I do. So actually, Pat Robertson became my motivation to say, you know what? If this man who looks like he is about to drop over dead can get on television every single day And he can have words come from his mouth because his mind is sound. His body is aging, but his mind is sound, and he's still as clear as he can be, and he's approaching 90 years old. That I want to do that, and I can do that, and nobody says, hey, I'm not tuning into that old guy anymore. I'm not watching that old guy. Television has changed, especially Christian television, and so I can be doing this for 23, 25 more years from wherever I want to do it until I'm into my 90s, and maybe while I'm on a conversation with you, I happen to lean over and I don't get back up. And praise the Lord, you got to see me in, that was it, and that brings.
I would just rather have Christ come and take us the Elijah route in the fiery chariot.
There you go, and myself as well. We're talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain: Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. An extraordinary resource because he's accessible to the realities of what we contend with every day and what impact it has, and gives us practical, very practical lessons on what we can do. It doesn't matter where you are on this continuum, unless you are in full-blown dementia and full-blown Alzheimer's, there are things you can do to improve your life and reduce the risk or delay the further erosion of your brain. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the stressors, anxiety, and those contributing factors to this attitude that we have. A lot of it has to do with our relationship with the Lord. But then I want to turn and look at the caregivers and those the 65 million Americans that are taking care of somebody, and the impact that's having on what the future looks like, because care for the caregiver is a very understaffed, under-approached marketplace, that an underserved community in looking at the impact of a caregiver who is watching somebody that they love. And oftentimes the caregiver of a dementia patient is someone who they love, and you're watching somebody erode before your very eyes, and you have to have outlets, you have to have releases, you have to find ways in order to manage that. Or, although the aging brain is not contagious, the aging brain setup, the aging brain contributors actually can be contagious, and you can adopt bad behaviors through the process of caregiving. So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll rejoin Dr. Timothy Jennings. We'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. He's also the author of The God-Shaped Heart and The God-Shaped Brain. Tim, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be here, Eric.
You know, there's a lot of people being treated for sleep disorders. I think that's the #1 prescribed medication in America today is sleep aids. Then right behind that are anxiety medications. All I remember was Prozac.
Don't forget the GI upset Pepsids and the ulcer medicines and yeah.
Yeah, all these things where it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. Mm-hmm. And I think The Aging Brain kind of falls into that same category, that the culmination of a lifetime of what's eating you winds up bringing you back with a brain that is now used its energies in a negative space, and therefore, because it's not being fed, it's not receiving nutrition, it's not being expanded, it's
not resting.
It has no choice but to shrink. And therefore, that is the aging brain, is the shrinkage of the ability to process. The distance between those electron fires is shorter, and the thought process is interrupted, and there's not an even flow. We're a society that never thinks about long-term impact, but we also are a society in America especially where the boomer generation is now the majority, and we're facing these issues and wondering, first I need to lose the weight, then I need to change, make lifestyle changes, and is it too late, and when is it not too late? And maybe that's where we should start, in the words of encouragement, to say, when you see yourself at this point, let me tell you, it's not too late, but you need to start doing some things about it.
If you still have awareness, if you're aware aware of your situation, aware of your circumstance, aware of who you are, aware of your choices, it's not too late. It's too late for the person whose brain has been so damaged they don't have awareness. They're not aware there's a problem. They're not aware of who they are. They're not aware of the options. Well, it's too late for that person. But as long as you have awareness and what the options are, then it's not too late. And the data shows people over age 65 who begin implementing simple things like walking 20 to 30 minutes a day. We can see growth in the memory circuits of their brain that reverses aging. The brain appears 2 years younger because they've got new circuits in that part of the brain growing, and cognition improves and memory performance improves. And so it's never too late as long as you still have awareness.
New ideas. We talked about this, learning something new, taking on something that you thought about in your youth and you never pursued, painting, writing, whatever it is, mountain climbing, spelunking, any kind of activity that you put off. Learning something new stretches and helps prevent this aging brain and this early onset of dementia. So you actually encourage people to take on new.
Yes, and this is important. And I like that you gave several new things that include some physical activity, because when we exercise physically, it turns on one set of genes that makes proteins that cause our neurons to be healthier and sprout new connections and reduces inflammation and helps just keep going. That's the physical benefit. But when we learn something new cognitively, learning a new language or studying mathematics or physics and learning something you've never known before, that actually turns on a different set of genes that creates a different set of proteins that causes neuronal growth and reduces our risk of dementia. So new learning absolutely is important. And if that new learning can be combined with physical activity, like, say, learning ballroom dancing if you've never learned it. See, ballroom dancing is physical activity, but you have to actually get your brain involved and think about the steps and learn the various order of the steps and so forth. So activities that do that are very healthy.
Is there an age? I know that younger people have a higher propensity for learning a language than older people. So I had a friend moved to Israel in his 40s, and it took him 20 years to master what a 19-year-old masters in 6 months. It took him that long because it was just such a new way of trying to immerse himself into something that just took a much longer time to process and register. Of course, now he's fluent in speaking Hebrew, fluent in reading Hebrew, works in a business, but he said it was very challenging for him, and one of the ways that they were able to make a living was his wife taught English to Hebrew speakers. So that was where they started, that she didn't have to have a mastery of Hebrew, she only had to have a mastery of English and know how to teach English, and so she was the counter immersion. She was immersing Israeli.
As a general principle, what you're describing is correct. Younger brains are more pliable, and they can make those changes more quickly because much of the brain, particularly under the age of 15, because there's so much of the brain circuitry that's still in original development, hasn't been assigned, hasn't been formed, and the brain is still basically like a blank chalkboard, assigning and applying and developing and laying down these pathways. So it's absolutely quicker and easier in childhood and adolescence, but there's also variability from person to person. Later in life, some people can learn languages easier than other people, where some people can learn musical instruments easier than other people, and some people can learn mathematics easier than other people. So even at a different age, some of these abilities have some genetic components to it, where some people have a different skill or talent for those abilities. And so I've known people that are past adolescence and past age 30 who can pick up languages much more quickly than maybe a 19-year-old could, just because they have a better propensity for languages than others. So there's that variability there. But in general, younger brains are more pliable and can learn things more quickly.
You know, we do so much in the area of testing to determine people's aptitudes for certain things. We look early on in life, high school students, college students. When we get older, we do spiritual gifts assessments. But I'm wondering, I would like to learn to play the piano, but I don't know if I have the aptitude to learn to play the piano.
So my view is that most people can learn basics of almost anything. If you took piano lessons, you could learn to play very rudimentary basic tunes, but you're probably never going to be a concert pianist, and that's probably true at this age. Depending on your propensities, younger people that don't have a great gifting in music can still learn to play some basic tunes and basic instrument, but they may never be qualified to play in an orchestra. You have to have a certain talent, but talent alone isn't sufficient. We think of people like Tiger Woods in golf or Michael Jordan in basketball, both clearly talented, but they also spent hours, tens of thousands of hours training and practicing and honing that talent to become absolutely exceptional in that ability. So talent alone is not sufficient. There is application and use of that talent in order to develop that ability, and that neurobiologically corresponds to developing neural circuits that expand with use. Our capacities improve with use.
So at this age, over 65, what would be the reasonable expectation of something that I might be able to learn that would be, that I might have at this age a better, higher rate of success? Is there an assessment?
Anything that you actually are passionate. The real key is motivation. The real key. If you learn it because you say, you know what, my doctor said I need to do this, I'm not really interested in it, but I'm going to start studying Spanish, but I don't really care about Spanish, you will learn some few words, but you won't learn much. But if you met a woman and you fell in love and you married a person who speaks Spanish and you were completely motivated to talk to her in her language, then your likelihood of learning that language over 65 is much higher. And you may never become a fluent Spanish speaker where people can't tell your original language wasn't Spanish, but you would become proficient enough to be understood and to understand them.
You know, my passion when I came to faith at 44 was to learn the Bible, and it's still my passion. And so,
are you still learning?
And I'm still learning every day. It's why I immerse myself in what I do, because I'm so passionate about it, and so it's that capacity. But wanting to be more dimensional, more multidimensional. I mean, this is what I do, 60 to 80 hours a week.
So yeah, your key is really picking something you're going to enjoy, and that goes to exercise. The studies on exercise show that people, if they're doing an exercise that they don't enjoy, that's out of obligation, that they have to slog through with negative mental energy, they don't get the same physiologic benefits because they're activating their stress circuitry. So even with exercise, you want to pick one that you enjoy, you look forward to doing, and then you get all the robust benefits from it.
Well, I have to be very, very honest with you. I have not discovered one yet. I actually looked at Scripture, and it says that only the wicked run when no one's chasing them. So the whole concept of jogging is biblically out for me. So,
how much exercise would you have gotten if you were one of Jesus' disciples, and you read about how much walking they did from city to city and place to place?
Well, that's what I leave Thursday for Israel a week from today, and we log 55 miles in 10 days.
And then but that wasn't just 10 days of the year. That was every day for them, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that I could do in Israel. That I could do, and it's not taxing to me. I actually have this health meter tied to my iPhone with my iWatch that keeps it tells me when I'm too sedentary. It tells me when to get up. It tells me when to walk around. It tells me when I'm not when I have daily goals for calorie burn, for hours of activity, for standing hours, all those things, and it tells me it'll vibrate and say it's time to stand up. You haven't stood up 5 minutes out of every hour. Every waking hour, I need to be on my feet in order to satisfy the requirements of this particular program. If I'm not logging enough activity, and it logs my steps and my hours of exercise and all of that, and it tells me. It's kind of a policeman for me because I can get so engaged and so involved. I just haven't found an exercise. I did for a year on a treadmill listening to the Bible through it, and that was a way for me to combine something that I was passionate about. We've got only about 5 minutes left. I want to address this caregiver issue because this is the next, to me, the next Wild West, the next pioneering area where we're going to have to start addressing the needs of the caregivers, because there is little being done to address the needs of the caregivers, and people really understanding that if you have someone in your family or someone you're close to, you're providing care for, that, the first couple of weeks after the diagnosis or the hospital visit or the first trip, you get a lot of support, but then pretty soon you're waking up every morning facing a day filled with a lot of situations where in the early stages, you are able to take care of the loved one.
Let me give you a couple principles for caregivers.
Okay.
First principle of caregiving is the health of the caregiver. You have to step back and absolutely objectify the things that are required for the health giver to not lose their health, to maintain their wellness. Because if the health giver doesn't stay healthy, the health giver can't give health care. And so you have to determine, how many hours of sleep do I need each night? How many calories of nutrition do I need each day? How many hours of meditation with the Lord and breaks from the work? Because no single person can provide health care 24 hours a day. You will burn out, you will exhaust, and you will end up a patient somewhere. So you have to establish, what are the minimums that I'm able to do that I can sustain over the long haul without being burned out and exhausted. Then you look at the next principle, objectify the actual needs of the person you're caring for. And you actually look at what those needs are. And when those needs cross over the line of what you're objectively able to do to maintain your health, that pulls triggers on additional help has to be brought in, whether it's additional family members to share the burden, healthcare providers, social work services, hospice care, or nursing home, or whatever. You objectify and move in that direction, based on the actual health condition of the loved one, not on the heart condition of your love for them, okay? Because many people say, I love them too much, and so I'll do extra, and I'll do more, and I'll do more. And what happens is you end up destroying your own health and not actually being able to care for them anymore. Third principle is here's a big one, learning to tolerate your own emotional pain to do what the person actually needs done for them. And there is no right or wrong answer. Some people, the best thing for them is to leave them in their home to die, because to take them out of their home and put them in a nursing home would be torture to certain people. Other people, the best action would be to take them out of their home and put them in a nursing home. That would be better for them. But either one of those, depending on the person, could cause the person who's taking the action to feel intense emotional distress about either one of them. Letting a parent stay in their home where their failing health is going to die. I can't let my parent die. Putting my parent in a nursing home, I can't put them in a nursing home. I promised them I never would, etc., etc. In other words, our own emotions become the obstacle to doing what actually is the best interest of what that person would want done for themselves if they were able to make that choice.
I'm very thankful, incredibly thankful, that my mother's 93, lives on her own, wants no one ever to take care of her. I believe that she'll be like my grandmother, who didn't feel well one day, went to the hospital, and 4 hours later she was gone. That's kind of the way I see my mother, never being infirm, never having that whatever would befall her would be catastrophic and instantaneous. It would just be, at 93, there's not really a lingering diagnosis or anything that she's dealing with. She takes no medications, and she actually has the attitude that, why should I take your medications? You killed all my friends. And because they're not around anymore in their 80s, and she's been looking for new friends ever since. But it's it's a blessing, and I see a lot of people who go through this, and it is very emotionally taxing to watch a loved one who moves from being engaging and vital to one day calling you by the wrong name, or one day confusing a situation, and it becomes the first sign that there really is a situation developing that is not going to be reversing, it's actually going to be advancing, and you're getting a glimpse of the way things are going to be. That has to be very, very difficult to go through, and I don't envy anybody who has to go through that. I have a great deal of compassion for that. We've been talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, author of The Aging Brain and The God-Shaped Heart and The God-Shaped Brain. And you can read more about the aging brain at www.agingbrainbook.com and his ministry website, comeandreason.com. This is outstanding counsel from a man who is deeply grounded in the Word of God, and a scientist, a practitioner, someone who wants to help you not face the tragedy of early onset of dementia and the aging brain, knowing that it is preventable, that this is one of those areas in your life that you can prevent. You can delay what may be inevitable, but you can delay it, and you can live the fullness of life by just implementing some very simple changes into your life, into your routine, your sleep regimen, your hygiene regimen, your food regimen, your exercise, and your sleep regimen, and you will dramatically improve the quality of your brain and your brain chemistry. Tim, so great to see you, and I look forward to the next time we have together here on Revealing the Truth.
Thanks, Eric.
God bless, my friend. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.